Okay, guys, actually, Simon, I can ask you to stick around. We are going to throw it open to you guys to ask some questions and invite the panellists back up. So Simon, Dave, Chai, you all want to come up and have a seat. But I also want to introduce you to another guest, and that is Jonathan Crossfield, who is this lovely gentleman right here. And Jonathan is a journalist, he's a digital marketer, he's a social media marketer, he's a blogger. In essence, if you could round him up into one word, it would be a storyteller. So he's joining us on the panel today. And we are basically, so just to remind you guys all, this is Simon, Chai, David, Jonathan. Yeah? Cool. So who is going to kick me off with the first question? Come on, I'm sure you guys have... Oh, Chai.
Say this.
Oh.
But wait, there's more.
There is? What?
So it's funny to me, you know, the advertising campaign. But wait,
I just don't know how to deal with myself going
don't worry about
viral after swallowing that fly.
That's too funny.
Okay. All right. I am gonna. How many mics do I have? Okay, give me one. All right. This one is for the people's mic. So somebody kick me off with the first question for these guys. You seriously have an amazingly intelligent bunch of people here who really know this industry. So make use of this resource. Rick. And just introduce yourself. It was on. I think it's on.
Hi. Oh, hello.
It is on.
Great. Hi. So I'm Ange. I'm actually a classically trained marketeer. So, sorry. So no technical kind of bone in my body. So yes, I do like colours and logos, Simon. That's actually my forte. And I've got a question which is probably a little bit boring to people if they don't. For me, I'm not very technical, so I just need to understand it a little bit more. And it's referenced a couple of times with what David said and Chai, and it was how much, and I want to understand is how much traffic is too much. So I'm already building a campaign for a new product launch, and I'm looking at a viral campaign that links to my website, and I just want to understand a little bit more about how that works so I can direct the people that work for me in understanding how much is too much and what makes a website go down.
So a bunch of things can make a website go down. So we had a campaign for a burger company who I can't name, but they're the largest burger company in Australia, and we host for them. And they said, we're going to do a campaign and it's going to go really big. Can you tell us what we're currently using? And I said, yeah, I can tell you all that, but how big are you going to go? And they had no idea. So we had to say, well, based on the infrastructure you have this much room for growth in the bandwidth, in the server, in the network, in the storage. There's many chains, as you were pointing out, Dave, that can fail. And we highlighted how each of them much they could grow before things would fail or they have to pay more money. So then when they kind of figured out, well, based on the current environment, I can grow. I think my campaign will double. Then we said there's option 1, option 2, option 3, that you could do that. So it's based on my targets then. So if I say, I know I'm at this many customers and I know I'm going to triple that or quadruple it or whatever, yep. If that goes way over that, then yep. That's actually going to break my website. If you have existing infrastructure that you're running a campaign on and the campaign is not that different, it's easy reference, right? The problem you have is we did a campaign for the Combank. You've got some Combank people here somewhere along the line where they had the Investorville campaign and you could go online and figure out based on real data, how much you could make if you invested in a property, and you need to call their property investment people and financial advisors to get more advice. When we came up with the campaign, there was no existing data. There is nothing. So we had to help, I think it was BMC, come up with whatever the campaign was going to be and quantify it and guesstimate what the usage was going to be and come up with a campaign that would work. So when you have no data, it's actually very, very difficult. When you have something to test, we could use something like Dynatrace and say, pretend you have 10,000 users. And then you could say, this is what broke in the chain of things that could break. If you don't have anything, it's very hard. We did the campaign for Vodafone when they launched the first iPhone, and they weren't allowed to tell you what the date was because it's iPhone. Steve Jobs didn't want to tell you. So when we got the date, they wanted to release an email to 300,000 or 400,000 people at one time, and that was the day. And we had 3 days' notice, and they said, "Will the site work?" And we said, I didn't write the code, I have no idea. And we didn't know about Dynatrace then. So we did it the old-fashioned way. We set up a bunch of servers and banged on it and basically drew a bunch of charts and said, right, based on the infrastructure you have, if you did this and this and this, it would take, I think we worked out 9 pages with the transactions. You could handle 100,000 at one time in 20 minutes. There's a whole chart that tells you what you could do. We did a load test. Yeah, we did a load test. Yeah. So they decided originally that they were going to do 100,000 users every 2 hours because we said, awesome. They found out that they were losing the campaign. They emailed everybody at the same time. So, but we knew in advance we could test it out and work it out. So I don't know what part of the website's going to break until we test it, or we can give you a good idea. Like, if you know intelligent IT people, we can help you kind of work it out. But we're not going to know until we get a real tool that tells you the answer.
Tool, thanks. I don't know the answer and I'm not a tool. Thanks, Chai. But yeah, I think that's a good point. Like, I think if you can try and prepare as best as possible. I mean, you're never going to know whether you're going to go viral like Caroline's swallowing a fly episode. So we did have an example recently where we were called in to a particular customer and they thought they were getting a denial of service attack of some sort. They had 3 million users coming in from Asia. And the IT team were like, what's going on? How's the site going to cope? The IT operations guy was going into complete meltdown. And he said, are these real users or are we getting attacked? And the software was able to determine, no, these are actual real users. And of course, the first reaction is, well, how the hell have we got 3 million people coming? And the first phone call's to the CMO. And the CMO's like, yeah, well, we scheduled 3 million email blasts for the next couple of days all through Asia. And of course, and that's one of the key things, I suppose. You've got to be prepared. You've got to talk to IT teams and say, hey, guys, this is what I'm preparing for. This is what I'm doing, and ensure that it can scale.
We get that. So we host the website for Hamilton Island, and the IT guys didn't know there was a marketing plan. Suddenly there's an email blast out, and boom, traffic goes to the roof, and things happen, and we have to manage that. So
spikes are the issue, aren't they? It's spikes that are the issue. Most viral campaigns don't have a kind of, they might go viral, but not everyone gets infected at the same moment. It's the email that's the problem. If you blast out thousands of emails and people click on them at the same time.
And it is that unpredictability that I think is the big danger. And I know social media was the big wake-up call to a lot of people when that happened. I remember a few years ago now, the first time I ever heard about Threadless, the T-shirt site in the States, was when they had a $9 on all of their T-shirt sale that was being retweeted around. And I've gone, that's fantastic, I'll go through there. And of course, that was when the site was down, because that was the first time, it wasn't the first time they'd run the sale, but it was the first time certain people had retweeted that sale, and it had just gone so nuts that it was down for nearly 24 hours. And of course, 6 months later, they did another sale, and everyone's gone, oh, they must have learned now. Nope. So there is that, but this sale might be fine, the next sale might be fine, but then you just need one person to push it out, and it goes nuts. Another example, I'm a geek in my spare time, so I did a lot of work with the Doctor Who Society of Australia, because you do. And there's 3 of us who were looking after the Twitter account at the time. And one of them decided to tag Neil Gaiman in something that we just posted on our website. It was an article about something that's in the series, and just tag Neil Gaiman. And if anyone's familiar with Neil Gaiman, he has something like 1.5 million followers. Our site was gone like that for about... And they were like, next meeting, badge of honour is like, I brought down the site. Like you were saying, it was like, yay, this is what we should do. We should be tagging people on Neil Gaiman. I'm going, no, not until we actually know that people will see something when they come through.
Yeah, we don't host that site. One of the ones we did, which was predictable in some way, was we hosted the mobile website for Tabcorp. And, if this is 0, the bandwidth goes like this, and then you start the Spring Carnival, it goes like this. Then you got Melbourne Cup. And on the mobile app for Melbourne Cup, as opposed to the website, which we'd done previously, you can buy it on the website. The website grew, and in the last few minutes, people would buy. The mobile app, people are waiting for the race to start, and then they go click. The last minute and a half, it shot through the roof. And then the minute and a half after that, we thought it crashed, but didn't crash because it went to zero because no one's doing anything. For 3 minutes, no one did anything. It's just watching the site. The peak of Melbourne Cup the previous year is the starting point for the Spring Carnival the next year. We didn't know that till year 3, but eventually we figured it out and we could plan for it.
Thanks, guys. That was very insightful. I really appreciate it.
Okay, next question. Got more food for thought.
Bashir from Liquid Logic, and we're a software company, and one of the important questions is how early on in development would you love to be involved in terms of setting up the structure and giving advice in terms of architecture, what would work, what wouldn't work, especially for developers, they like to hack stuff themselves.
Yeah, for the software developer, so we're talking with Mike Boyd at the moment. I don't know if Mike's here, but he's got a campaign that he wants to do. We've already started before any coding started. We actually draw the diagrams on where things should be, and before you start even the coding, and we're getting Mark involved in doing the mathematics and the logic for the real-time analysis, and we have to get developers and database designers. Way before any coding started, we've designed the infrastructure already.
Yeah, I think that's true. I don't know how you can start the dev without resolving all your DevOps from one end to the other, because if you look at the issues of running a website in 2015, there's lots of changes, there's enormous number of code changes that have to be rolled through really simply, quickly and easily, and unless you work that whole ecosystem out before you start, you end up in a mess that's really hard to resolve later. So. And this stuff's easy, much easier now, and it's much cheaper than it used to be. I mean, the thing about scale is really, is there any excuse now in 2015 for not having the scale? Because it's so cheap. You don't have to go and put a CapEx in for a huge number of servers. You can scale it and scale back.
Yeah, I think on that point, it's DevOps is a... Are you guys familiar with DevOps? It's technical of people. Some people, yeah? Marketing, all right, okay. Well, it's like, DevOps is not that dissimilar from marketing, really, I think. Sometimes it's like marketing teams working together. It's like the traditional marketers working with the digital marketers, working with the agencies, whatever. Anyway, I didn't really fully understand that there's developers and operations and they see things very differently. And developers, like you said, maybe a little arrogant, yeah, I'm going to code this, I'm going to throw it over the fence and then go, there you go, operations, deal with that, see you next week. And so it's really important, obviously, for those two teams to work together, unless you want to be just in continual cycles of trying to fix things all the time. So, we talk about this continuous delivery and be continually able to push out new features, because if you don't release the feature successfully the first time, you got to go back all the way around again and continue to do it, instead of releasing it the first time, testing it, making it sure it works, and then moving on. And so I think, the more those teams can work together and have the insight and the data, the better.
Brad, am I allowed to mention SuperChoice? No. So for this company that we've never heard of before, we actually do that for them. They've got infrastructure already running. We have to transform it to a DevOps world so they can do 140 software projects in a year. And you can't do it on the same infrastructure. So as to Simon's point is you have to develop some way of launching 70 to 100 servers and run the test and then put it back, check the code back in, put it into production. So, I think Nordstrom said last night, right, when I asked him the last question, he couldn't quantify the amount of dollars because he's an engineer, he doesn't care. He's got unlimited budget to do performance. That's his job. So he took 2 months to maybe test something and then retest it because the programmer said, no, you didn't test it with the right parameters, go back and retest it. 2 months later, it was still trying to test it and they've already changed the code. It's too late. With the right tools, you can do it in days and weeks, So you can actually test it, find out the line of code that's the problem and fix it. So, but you'd still need to launch half a dozen servers to run that test or the whole suite. If you do load testing, the idea is you're going to break it. So you better launch a parallel infrastructure to run it to break it. If you do security testing, you're launching it to break it. You can't test it on the production environment. So you've got to do it early and plan for it to scale and have development environments. Design for failure. Design knowing that this could fail. Yeah.
We've got our next question just behind us, Jared, and then we'll come to you.
This is Jared from The Organic. Question for Dave. I like your example of development just throwing everything over the fence for operation. How does operation or marketing or someone else know, oh my God, my site is down, something's wrong. Dev is blaming operations is blaming dev, and then they both come together and they say, you know what, we're going to blame the service provider. How do you actually show, and after 4, 6, 48 hours later, they find out it's development or whatever, but how do you actually show that there's a problem with the code to actually settle this quickly?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I mean, I could answer it by saying you have the right monitoring software in place, but I'll give you a story instead that Gopal from Nordstrom shared last night. So I was talking about that 2.5 seconds, and then you increase some slight, they increased it by 0.5 seconds, and it had a slowdown in response time. So those guys go through and they try and test as much as they can before it goes into production, but you can't test for everything, right? And they had this one particular example where they're like, the shop page is now 3.5 seconds. And Gopal's like, and this guy's like, he's a super, super smart engineer, and you get the feeling nothing gets past him. And so he was looking at the data and he goes, how has this happened? Who has done this? And so he goes back through the logs and there's nothing in there that went into production. And what ended up happening, and I don't know the technical coding term for it, but someone in development implemented a wait instead of a timeout, which meant everything was waiting, and they increased the delay by a second. So it was something to the non-technical folks, and even for someone who is a super smart engineer, could easily miss. And what they do, obviously, is they make the decision based on the data that they can see. So they look at the data and then they make their decision and say, well, that was the actual cause down to a line of code, and that's what we need to fix it. And it's about finding that needle in the haystack in order to be able to fix that quickly before it continues to impact the sales. Yeah, go for it.
So the wait means that the wait was half a second. Like, he wanted to stop everything after half a second, but if you wait half a second before you do something, you've caused a half a second delay. You lose money. If you time out after 30 seconds, which means the customer didn't do anything, you cut the session down. That's completely different. The server is waiting 30 seconds, or the customer has done nothing for 30 seconds. They're completely different. So, and that's easy to miss, and you need the right tools to find the answer. Measure, test, measure, fix. You just need to do that. Was it find, fix, and validate?
And I think also, to that point, it's not just about tools as well. Like, obviously, I'm a software vendor, so I want to pitch the tools. But part of the DevOps principles is teams working together. So I don't know if you guys realise, like, when you work remotely, it's really difficult to work with your team. So it's difficult to get the answers that you want. So the way the organisation at Nordstrom work now is they don't have IT and they don't specifically have separate divisions. They sit in clusters. It's pretty similar to the way like REA group work as well. They work in little project groups where there is no real IT. The IT, everyone's IT, we're all technologists, we all work together, we all find problems, we all fix problems, we're all part of the one company. So kind of getting rid of those silos is probably one where it can hopefully minimise the catch this operations.
He actually said everyone owns performance. Everyone in the company owns performance. We often say it, right? Everyone in the company is in sales. You walk out and you badmouth the company to your cousin who tells someone else who makes it a joke, and then you end up losing the deal.
Because I've got a number of different clients, most of whom are actually in the IT industry as well, but quite a few others. The common experience I have is very similar to what Simon was describing, where marketers and IT seem to have this war between themselves, where the marketers are happy to buy the sizzle of automation, for example, or the sizzle of cloud, or the sizzle of all these amazing things, the sizzle of social media, the sizzle of this and that and the other. But when it actually comes to implementing it, they bring in the technology, they buy the Marketo or the Eloqua at what huge markup it is per month, and then they realise that by bringing it in, oh crikey, our marketing strategy isn't even close to being where it needs to be able to deliver this. And then, of course, that's an IT problem. And the IT is going, no, you signed off on buying that thing. It's like if you've got to have worked out how you're going to generate the content, you're going to have to generate who is it you're targeting, what the various triggers are, why aren't they in the CRM, how are you going to get the data out. This is something I'm seeing time and time again as I come into a business, is they've invested in something like Eloqua, they've invested in something like Marketo, and I go, fantastic, how are you using it? And they've got a single list and they're using it as an email blast every month as the most expensive email marketing system on the planet, because they have yet to get past that strategic stage of how they're going to implement it. And I think that then starts the war in the companies that ends up with this ever cycle of failure.
Okay, I've got a question down the front.
Yes, mine's not really to do with marketing, but planning for the unexpected and how one insignificant event can suddenly have a catastrophic effect. The company I work for employed 9,500 people. It had operated an IT system which had not crashed for 15 years. And suddenly one guy sent an email to someone else wishing you a happy birthday. Unfortunately, he copied it to everyone. So we then had 9,500 emails went out. 1,000 guys responded saying, why the hell have we got this? And then people saying, get off my internet and get off this. And we ended up with something like 3 million emails going to everyone in the company. And they had to really shut the whole system down just to get on top of it. And it took a day and a half with the system down from one happy birthday.
Sounded like a pretty good party, anyway. And then they get the ones where they're like, please stop CCing all, and they write back, and they just go, no, you stop, you're contributing to the problem. Yeah, I've been through that, that's a good one.
Hello, I'm Goretti. I'm an old creative technologist, and being thrown from job to job, I actually helped launch Big Pond TV. So by asking the right question, will the servers handle 6 different channel networks, filtering video through the one interface? And they went, oh shit, no. Well, what do we have to do? Oh, we need to upgrade the servers. And when are we launching? Oh, in 3 weeks. Can we do it? Yes. How much is it going to cost? X. We did it, and it, we didn't know how many millions of people were going to launch, but no one had thought about running the test. So I'm coming from a disgruntled producer background where I'm going the old way was the best way, and coming into Australia where it's like companies want to launch, they don't really care the back end, they've got a product there, they've got to get out there. In the old days, we used to spend about 6 weeks just working out the system specifications. What was the target market? What kind of device were they going to be using? Put together a huge technical specification. That was already with a design and marketing thought process. And then you do an analytics of, what was actually going to be built, what was the solutions architecture behind it, what kind of software implementation we're going to be using, and then you'd start to do the designs, yeah? But in that one room, you'd have your marketer, your account lead, your lead designer, your lead IT, and the owner of the company. And the people who you were selling to knew that before you could even start designing, it was going to take at least 2 to 3 months just to work out all of that. And I think that's the problem here in Australia. People are not spending enough time just thinking about that user journey, what your end market's going to want, what viral campaign's going to work the best, what email. My question is, what can you guys and people who lead sort of software development companies and account leads out there do to instruct their clients to just spend that initial time to think about exactly what needs to happen and invest that X amount of, thousands of dollars for things to work successfully? Because then it makes our life a lot easier as producers.
I think...
Stop using the word agile as an excuse.
No, I hate that word. Hate that word.
Every company that's always told me they're agile definitely isn't. I think it's resetting expectations for the first thing. I think a lot of what you've described about not doing the groundwork to work things out is because everyone's on this hamster wheel of campaign. This month I've got to get this target. And what we're in now is that stuff is still necessary to a point, but we really should be talking about the long-term strategies. I mean, a lot of the stuff I do is content marketing. And a content marketing strategy, you won't get results out of it for a year or 2 years. And so at the beginning, you're setting the expectations with the people. It's you're not that first YouTube video we put up. That's not going to rewrite our business. That blog post we put last night isn't going to go viral. But that's how CEOs seem to think. And we need to reset the expectations and say, no, this is about putting in incremental work over time that will pay off maybe 1 year, maybe 2 years, maybe even further down the track. This is a snowball effect. And you can only start pushing the snowball when you know which direction you're going to start pushing it. And so this is when the groundwork becomes important. And so it's about breaking that campaign cycle, I think.
Yeah, and I think also, it's kind of like going to the gym, I guess. You just got to get in that habit and you got to continue to do it. And I think it's the same, even from a campaign perspective, And we see it all the time, and look, I'm personally guilty of it, and I have access to some of the world's best tools, and yet sometimes I don't look at it. I don't look at the data, and all of a sudden I'm going, you know what, why didn't that campaign perform as well as it should? And I pulled my phone out, and it took like 15 seconds, and I went, well, hang on a minute, the site isn't optimised for mobile, and I can pull the data up, and I can go, yeah, okay, yeah, I can see that. It makes perfect sense to me now. But I think sometimes, yeah, to your point, like, you've got to go back and think about the basics and draw things out and what do we want people to do and where we want them to go and where are they going to end up. And they're typically going to end up on a website and somewhere, if it's a conversion of some sort you want them to have, then you've got to look at that and see and look at journeys and start to figure out what people want and where they're going. And I think sometimes social media and email campaigns and data, and it's burnout. And we forget, hey, they end up at the website, so let's maybe try and make sure the experience on the site is good first, and then go and worry about like how many click-throughs we got on Twitter and retweets and stuff like that. Yeah, I think you were saying your summary was they don't have tracking codes on their campaigns for Sony and Universal.
Yeah, you'll find companies like Universal, Sony, or others like that are driving campaigns, and you'll say, well, where's your conversion code? You know, how do I know where these people are going through? So you've got to go through Campaign Monitor, you've got to go through Google Analytics, and you get to a point and you go, shit, but how did they get to, you know, Dick Smith or whatever it was where they bought the DVD? You know? And they've just forgotten to put one bit of code. That's it. And yet they're spending loads of money. Like, not even that's thought about properly. It's like...
That's right. It is. It goes straight to the point of the 4Nays group did some research a couple of years ago, which revealed a couple of stats that marketers should be horrified by but not be surprised by at the same time, which was CEOs traditionally, 80% of CEOs said they distrust any information that they get from their marketing team. They will trust, 90% will trust everything they get from their CFO. And you've just described one of the reasons why, is like the data that they're giving up to the CEO doesn't necessarily say, well, can you prove that that was how we got those sales? And usually, no, we're giving them fluffy metrics because we can say how many likes we got on that post, which is meaningless, but we still use it. But we can't talk about, we can track the clicks through from that particular campaign and how many of those people converted and where they dropped off. We're not giving them that level of detail. The CFO does because he lives in spreadsheets. We're not doing that.
But I think some of the issues with marketing are structural and not entirely marketing's fault. But because if you look at the IAB in the States did a study, and I think they found for every dollar you save off your traditional media budget, you have to spend $1.30 in digital because you've got a whole pile of resource that comes to needs to be brought to the equation. It's way more resource intensive. So you can't assume. So there's a whole pile of organisations that assume they're going to get a massive cost saving out of marketing because of digital, but actually they need to put the resources into marketing to make that difference up, 30 cents extra for every dollar you save. And I think that's half of the problem. The resources aren't there. The other part of the problem is, for God's sake, it's 2015. I know I've said that a couple of times, but marketers still do Cockle, and yes, they still study Cockle, and no one deals with some of these basic IT issues around a new world order that's happened. I mean, the fact is, if you're becoming a marketer now, you have to understand digital, you have to understand how stuff is developed. You don't have to be able to do it yourself, but you've actually got to come to grips with what is involved with the whole landscape of building and managing websites. And I think the third thing that's happened is, if you look at the Lean IT movement, I don't know if you've read anything about Lean IT, but Lean IT was there to pull cost out of the IT department, hand that cost back to the business, and the business will spend the money. And it was just a way of reducing cost in IT. And now that digital's arrived, and you go, well, some adult has to run this stuff, and that's normally IT's responsibility. So they look around for IT, but IT doesn't have the resource either because they've had this Lean IT infrastructure imposed on them. There's just no one in IT that even knows one end of digital from another. I mean, we get clients, there's no one that actually understands the process of developing a website. They don't understand the pre-production, production, you know. Even if you move to Agile and say, well, we're going to run Scrum on this project, they don't know that because they haven't worked with it. They don't have the resources to cope with it anyway. And that's the problem. It's a structural problem, and it's impacting a lot of what goes on in this country. I mean, we've got the most wired-up consumer. I mean, you're getting the feeling this is a bugbear of mine, but
just a little bit.
We've got the most wired-up consumers on the planet. We've all got friggin' mobile phones that we're using them. We're actively engaged in all of this stuff, and we've got a bunch of companies that haven't actually delivered. And they haven't delivered, and it's not necessarily their fault. Structurally, they just haven't been given the money. I mean, really, who knows a company that's got a budget enough to do what they need to do with this thing, with the resource that's big enough to do what they want? We're all moaning about it, and we're digging shit out of Western Australia and not spending money where it should be spent. Servicing.
Society is to blame.
Yeah. It's just weird.
Okay, we've got the next question.
I was watching a video the other day. It was a Robert Scoble interview, and he was at 49ers Stadium for Taylor Swift concert. And anyway, looking at that stadium, they have 1,200 Wi-Fi spots and 9,000 beacons. And looking at their dashboard room, they had data on everyone who was at the stadium that had all been onboarded to download the application. In terms of marketing automation and the rise of the proximity-based industry, do you think anyone's doing it right in this country yet? And in terms of Beacon's strategy and understanding how that ties into marketing automation, what are the dangers?
I've got a short-term memory problem, as I showed before. But the only one I can kind of, with the Beacon technology, again, last night, what Nordstrom do, as an example, which is they have the ability to, if you add to cart and you have, and they're primarily a female upscale fashion retailer, for those that don't know who Nordstrom are. And hopefully they never come out in Australia because my credit card will get maxed out by my wife, no doubt, because of this technology. But what they do is, if you add to cart on them and you have the mobile app enabled, they're omni-channel, so add to cart adds to everything. You then walk within 1 kilometre radius of any of the Nordstrom stores and they go, oh, and by the way, that product that we've got in stock that you were looking at online, it's in stock, come and talk to blah, blah, blah. And so I think that's probably a good example. And I actually had a chat to reverse engineer it. I had a chat, I don't think this will actually work, but it was a funny one, to a leading online wine company. And they were talking about it and they were saying, I'd actually like to reverse engineer the Beacon technology so that if someone goes anywhere near one of our competitors' positions, it would alert them and go, no, don't go in there. We'll give you 20% off. Come and see us.
Geo-conquesting, I think it's called.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's interesting how it can work. And I mean, I guess they, they can see if they're engaging in the application or whatnot. I mean, they have a phenomenal amount of data of where you are. I mean, you think about like Google Maps as an example. I was thinking about it the other day and I was like, how do they know the traffic? How do they know where the traffic's slow and where it's not? And I'm sitting there looking at Google Maps and I'm like, they've got my data, don't they? And I already kind of knew that, but it didn't quite realise until I was like, so they know exactly where I am. They know all the things that I like. And I guess, they've got an insane amount of capability to then be able to personalise. But I don't know anyone who's doing it locally.
So I've got one that's very similar to that. I've got, I was speaking to someone a while ago about Parramatta Council offering free Wi-Fi to the Parramatta area. And one of the things they wanted to do was to put Wi-Fi into all the stadiums. And you could just turn it on so that the capacity was there and then shut it down after the game. So people could watch the game and tweet and whatever they need to do during the game. So that was a discussion a couple of years back. I don't know if that fully got implemented, but there are people thinking about it. And definitely the location stuff is available everywhere. David Jones from Street Hawk runs it. Pan's got something to say.
Yeah, I think the domain.com that I use, if you download the app, so the real estate agent actually use this, you download the app, you search what you want to do, and then you go, look, I'm really interested in this place, I'm going to go to an auction, and then what happens is that the real estate agent has this proximity that knows that if you've turned it on, you're on 4G, and it actually knows and actually finds out the campaign, like, okay, this person downloaded this application, he or she went to visit this house, and now I know that he or she is actually looking around that area, or she actually turned to the auction. And at the same time, when they drive around the street, Geo will actually send an alert to them and saying, hey, there's a house around here, I think they're pretty interested, because that's what they were looking at. So I think the real estate agent are starting to do that, and actually more and more as the campaigns go through with that.
Yeah, I think the tools are there. Like, there's some fantastic platforms, but to what Simon was saying before, it just takes that investment in, like, sitting down, plotting out the customer journey and working out the logic that if this person doesn't choose to go here, should we wait 10 minutes and give them a message like this? If they have one or more children, earn more than $100,000 a year, are female, and also went to here and here in the last 5 days. But that's all manual. But to do that entry, I'm just wondering if anyone's, from a customer journey point of view, even thinking that far ahead, even beyond their online sort of EDM style sort of communications.
I've got one example that works really well, and then I can give you an example of where the issues are. There's a crowd called Blix that run beacons in motorcar dealers, and they use those beacons to actually benchmark the motorcar dealers. So it's actually really intelligent use of the technology, because 80% of people walk in with their mobiles and Wi-Fi turned on. So they can spot you, so they can do a couple of things. They can work out who bounces out of that dealer pretty quickly, because they can time how long you were there. They can work out if you cross-shop dealers, so they can, at the end of the day, they can tell a good dealer from a bad one, and that's really a very intelligent use of that thing, because they can see the dealers that convert the traffic, spend a lot of time with customers and don't let them bounce, and they know who their good dealers are. But I was talking to someone at Westfield the other day, and to your point, he said that the issue, they had two issues. One is most of their places are 6 stories, and they haven't kind of resolved the issue of which floor you're on yet, because that's hard, a little bit harder. But they hadn't actually found a really meaningful way to insert themselves into a customer's life that added value to anybody. And I think, and they're looking at it, I mean, they're trying, but that's actually the heart of this issue with marketing automation, isn't it? What are you going to do that's actually going to add value to someone's life and make them buy something or enjoy the experience more? And it's not been, I mean, it's complicated in this space, because we can do it all, but whether you should all...
Yeah, I think it's back to that value, right, isn't it? So you've got to work out how you're going to add value, and then structurally you've got to be able to do it. So we work with a number of large enterprises, and because we can see every single user, we know that if a mobile app crashes, we know, and they've obviously installed it and they're giving you their details, we know exactly who they are. You've got a CRM, you've got the ability to reach out to that person. Do they do it? Absolutely not. Do you ring the call centre and go, oh, no, what browser are you coming in on? And where you go? They could have seen you. They know what browser you came in. Oh, hi, Dave. I see you coming in on Chrome version 11 or whatever on a Mac from where are we? Darling Harbour. I'm really sorry. And you would go, oh, that's kind of cool. Oh, thanks for acknowledging me. Not, I'm really going to look into that problem, sir. That's something that I really care about. They don't. Little creeps. But I was talking to this wine brand. They're a favourite wine brand of mine, and they're not a customer yet, and I almost want to give them the software for free because I just want to hang out with them. But I was saying to them, I said, oh yeah, I got a call from your retention. I got a call from someone, the wine broker, whatever, and she said, and you haven't bought anything for a while, and they keep pitching the wrong wine to me. And I'm like, how do you pitch the wrong wine to me? I've bought so much wine from you. It's not difficult for you to look in your system and see what I buy and what I like. And then I'm like, and also, you could have actually, if you had our software, you put my name in and you can see actually what I did on the site, where I went to, what I searched for, and you can actually get me straight away and go, Dave, I know you like that Pinot Gris, come on.
You've joined the wrong wine society. Because my wife gets a call, she tells them, every 6 months call me, not before, and I'm going to order a certain amount, and you know what I like, and they'll recommend it. It's all there. It's all in the data. CRM works.
I think what we're talking about is where businesses are beginning to use some of their data. So like we're going to target, we must have all had the experience where we've bought something online, maybe as a gift for someone else. Like, I bought a dress for my wife. And suddenly I'm getting spammed all the time with all the latest female fashions, even though I entered, my name and so on. So they should know that I'm a bloke and possibly therefore her husband. So they've looked at one data set and decided to send out all the automation based on that, rather than saying, well, hang on, there's 2 or 3 other data sets here which would allow us to have a much clearer picture of who this person was, what their intention was, and therefore tailor the marketing to that.
You should have bought your wife lingerie.
Who says I did? Another example, this is one that frustrates me a lot, because at the moment I live in the Blue Mountains and I'm renting a house. We hope to buy there in a couple of years. And at the moment, we get DMs in our letterbox all the time of, all the local real estates, like, we've just sold a house for a record price in your street. If you want to put your house in the market at the moment, it's like, we'll be able to get you a massive price for it. And I'm going, this is not the messaging I want to hear, because I'm the one that's about to go into the market looking for a house. You're telling me, and one of them was from the real estate that my house is being rented through. So they've got me on their database as a renter, and they know, because I've told them that, I'm buying a house hopefully in the next couple of years, but they're now sending me messaging saying that basically they're working against my interests to my address. And it's because, they're single-minded about we're going to hit everyone with a single message, and we need to be thinking about, we need to be breaking down these messages to very, very, as granular as possibly we can.
You got it wrong. They want you to keep renting.
Okay. I agree, that's why I'm there, but I'm just saying, I just get like 3 postcards a day that basically say, you're never going to afford this.
Just one point about why the application of those technologies haven't really took grounds yet, and it's something I think fundamental, some of you have pointed already. It's that all this advancement of technology, I think, is so exponential that we're still experiencing the womb, and it hasn't really taken shape, and that we're picking bits and pieces, and I might make lots of enemies now, but most of these technologies have been driven by marketing and sales. But in reality, this is more of a humanity manifesting itself into inanimate objects, that all these beacons are just putting intelligence into places that when the Internet of Things become the Internet of everything, and that becomes the ecosystem where marketers are going to plug into, then we'll make more sense of how to sell people. So with those beacons, the reason they haven't been used properly is just because people are putting in places where they're trying to get sales out of people or data rather than empowering people on the ground. Yeah. Beacons are meant to be that the garage door should open because it knows I'm there. I shouldn't have to pay and take my credit card out of the shop. I should grab the stuff and walk out. It will know that I've made the purchase. Or that Mr. Johnson's stuck in his apartment for 3 days, maybe I should check on him. And when they start to manifest in all those places, and that becomes the ecosystem where the internet becomes everywhere, I think that becomes the ground where marketers can start to learn from big data and make real impact onto people's lives by driving them to proper sales and all sort of things. That's why there's no augmented reality all around us today, because no one put it in the right places. So the beacons, I think.
I think you're right. I think, though, where I would disagree with you is when you're saying that, this is relatively new and we're still adjusting to this, because I can remember saying more or less the same things at least 6, 7, 8 years ago. I'm telling the same anecdotes, just, swap the brand, someone else has just done it. There is an element of like, when are we going to learn? I don't think we're changing fast enough. The warning signs and the behaviours and so on have been known for a while. What we are talking about is like, human behaviour and how that relates to technology. And I think where we began to go off the rails a little bit, we got, marketing in particular, fell in love with technology and data when suddenly it's like, wow, particularly SEO. Suddenly we can get things down to zeros and ones in a spreadsheet and punch in an equation, pull out an ROI, which in retrospect now wasn't really accurate, and because it didn't represent everything else that the customer was doing, all the other behaviours that might relate to the sale. So suddenly we could justify putting more spend into search engine advertising, but we're shutting everything else off because somehow that didn't show up on the spreadsheet, and then suddenly wondering why everything collapsed. I think we still need to get out of that. Data is important, we need to use the data, we need to refer to the data, but we still need to be looking at people first. Not as zeros and ones, but actually as names and other data in other fields in their CRM, so that we know who they are and can be targeting them more effectively.
I agree with that, but I also think that this stuff's become overcomplicated because everyone wants to validate their existence by pretending they're doing something important, and really the only reason people are on the internet is to waste time or save time.
Hashtag Instagram.
And let's assume you're on a marketer's site. The only reason you ever go to anybody's site is to save time. And if only the marketing people actually indulged you that privilege and actually worked hard to save you time. And going back to what I said about information product marketing, they actually understand that really well. And part of the problem is that the marketing thinks that there's some grand, much more grand reason for having a website. It's to tell about the brand and it's the brand journey and all of that stuff. But someone's only there because they want to save time. And if you work out that what can facilitate their relationship with your organisation, save them time, make it easier to choose something or make it easier to service themselves through marketing automation, that's half of the challenge. And sometimes that's not actually all that difficult. You just got to really think about what makes it easy instead of making it bloody hard. I mean, what is going back to his presentation, what's a Facebook button doing on your homepage if it's holding up your internet traffic? It's ridiculous. It shouldn't be there,
How did you know it was Facebook? He was very clear. He didn't say that.
It's okay, Dave. Your secret is safe. You never said anything.
Pinterest then. But what's it doing there? It makes no sense because your job of the website is to service your customer in the most easy, frictionless way possible. Why are you putting something in the way? It's not what marketing's actually about. It makes no sense.
Okay, Chai.
We're going to redesign our website now.
All right, guys, we're getting down to last questions. I know you're getting really
All that
excited.
content you wrote, Jonathan, out. It's too long.
Okay, we're going down to last questions. I know we're getting really excited. Hold on. Rick. You're not lucky last yet. Okay, you want to be lucky last. All right, one more over here, then one more over here, and then you can all harass them quickly. You can run up there and flood them with your questions, and we'll just...
Do you think the Internet of Things is a threat to your marketing careers?
From a application and website monitoring company, no. I think it's fantastic, but I'm also a marketer, so maybe I'll pass that one to someone else. I don't know. It's a really good question. More things connected to the internet, the better for Dynatrace, but...
I think it's a threat to some marketing careers. I think marketing's been through enough revolutions that, it was around before the internet, it was around before TV, it was around, it's like these things come along and there are those who adapt and there are those who resist the change and then end up somewhere else. And I think this is just going to be that continuation. Sorry.
You need a lapel mic. You're in trouble. Okay, last question. You guys ready for it?
So we've talked a lot about the things that people do wrong, that they're not ready for marketing automation. We've talked a lot about what the nirvana state is of all the things you could achieve. But if you're in an organization that is very early on the journey, let's just say, what are the steps along the journey? What are the first steps that you can start doing that don't lead you down a deep dark hole, that don't take a lot of money, that get you to a point that you can start leading an organization down a journey that ends at a nirvana state?
Straight away is like from day one, start behaving as you expect you would at year 20. I mean, like the number of times, like I said before, I go into clients. I've got one client at the moment who shall remain nameless, and I'm going in and it's like been very successful up to a point. They reach that point where, okay, they're successful, they're expanding, they're growing, and now they're realizing that all of their systems just don't scale. and they haven't been capturing all the data that they need to capture all the way along, and they can't do some of the things that they now need to do to be able to go to the next stage. And so now they're having to build it, when really it's like you should have been capturing, you know, certain customer information from day one. You should have been capturing certain things in certain systems from day one, because you know at some point you're going to need to use it.
I think that the internet environment and the pressures on companies now, you know, the thing about it's the age of the customer and customer experience and all of that's kind of glib, but in a way it's true. And but it makes the whole thing really simple. If you really go back to understanding what your customer wants, you've actually now got the tools to give it to them. With technology, it's actually a lot easier than it used to be, a lot more functional than it used to be, and can actually deliver meaningful engagement for these customers. You just got to work out what it is they want, and the challenge for that is it's a challenge of the ego, because, I mean, I hate to be sort of Obi-Wan Kenobi here, but the problem with organisations is there's so much ego invested in themselves that they can't actually bring themselves to invest that ego in looking after the customer. And if you look at Amazon, it's all that Amazon have ever done. Look at their website. It's stripped down. There's not a lot of shit on there. It works really well. Works on every device. There's not a lot of fluff around the Amazon experience, but everything works because they've actually worked out what their customers really want, how they want it, where they want it, on what device they want it, and they've just delivered. Why is that so hard? It's only hard because somebody wants to tell you something about themselves and their bloody company, and you don't give a shit. You just want to buy something, or you want to know the price, or you want to know where the bloody branch is and what time they're open. Oh. That's what's so frustrating for people that have been around for a while in this space. It's just easy.
Yeah. I completely agree. It's got to be about the customer. You just got to think about that customer, and you think that as you're small, and what you were saying before, Jonathan, about, you know, who do you want to be when you're bigger, and you just don't lose sight of the customer and ensuring that. And sometimes you get into the big organisations and they forgot. They got too far removed, or it got too difficult, or it was someone else's job, and they forgot the customer, and they don't even, sometimes they're too far removed from who the customer is. And Gopal last night was saying they have to go and work in the store. Like, this guy's a performance engineer is actually a rocket scientist, and he has to go into the women's shoe section for a day and serve people to understand what the customer is, who they are, and what they want. And despite the fact that he went into the closet where all the shoes were and tried to re-engineer how the placement of all the shoes should be, like small heels here, bigger heels there, large ones there, black, white, blah, 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 blah. But it's a good example of them going back. And the other thing that he said was really, really critical is learn from your mistakes really quickly. No problems with failing, but learn from it as a team and make sure it doesn't happen again. And that's something that they kind of embrace. They don't... And when he was presenting, I thought it was quite cool because he shared 4 examples of when they failed. He said virtual dressing rooms, massive failure. People hated it. And he said, but we learned from it, we moved on, and now we're working on something else. So they think about that customer with that in mind.
He actually said sales went down. You put on the virtual dress with the virtual shoes and they didn't buy any of them. So they took the virtual stuff away and people still bought it. That's better. Do nothing, get more sales.
And it's who you include in that team too, because what I was just going to say too is, like, you know, we talked earlier about mapping the customer journey and the customer profiles and personas, or whatever you want to call them, and paradigms, or whatever jargon you use in your office. And the number of times it's like, I'm going through this exercise with a client and it's like, so who's in this room? And all the marketing team's there. And they tell me what they think the customer is. And then, like, you know, I'll talk to the sales team and they will look at what the marketing team have written and gone, you're kidding. It's like, so I will refuse to do any of those exercises unless the sales team are involved, because they're the ones who actually speak to the customers. But marketing seems to have, I don't know whether it's just the people I've spoken to, I'm sure you'll tell me whether I'm right or wrong, but there's usually a bit of a turf war between the two. And marketing does not like to include sales in these kinds of discussions, and they're the people who you really need in that room.
And customer support never get heard of.
Yeah, support. Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much. I'm going to stop our proceedings there because you are a great audience and you're very excited to ask lots of questions, which is fantastic because I think it's actually been really, really interesting tonight, particularly from someone who steps outside the industry, but this is all very relevant to what I do. So I'm fascinating. I've learned a lot. These guys are going to be around in the room, so make sure if you do have a burning question that you can go and ask them. And also, networking time. Actually, I've got a story about this. So it might be interesting. Every time I do one of these events, I get asked if I work for Office. And I mean, it would be an honour to work for Office, but I know nothing.
She does right now.
I know nothing about the cloud, really. Realistically, I work in television as a travel and adventure presenter, so it couldn't be further afield. And the way I came to be here with you guys is through networking. In a more unconventional way, Chai is actually my boxing coach. So i.e. don't piss off either Chai or I. But that's how I came here to be here. So it does go to show that you never know who's in the room. Yeah, because I'm taller, particularly in my blue shoes, which I put on all for you. But anyway, so guys, make sure that you do tap into the fact that there's some fantastic people in the room tonight, including yourselves. So have a conversation, eat some more food, drink some more wine, and guess what? We're back. E-Club, which is kind of the main horse in the stable event, is the Christmas party, which is the best one, is on the 3rd of December. So I expect you to all be taking out your multiple devices and putting 3rd of December in your diaries because that's an important one to come to because it's so much fun, and we will see you all there. And also, can we have a quick round of applause for our sponsors tonight? Thank you very much, Dynatrace. And thank you guys for coming out here. And thank you to the panellists and thank you to everyone, and enjoy.
And let's thank Caroline.
Thanks, guys.